Good morning. This is Tuesday, May 30th, and a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council. We meet Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays here in City Council chambers. You can watch us on channel 35, as well as go to our website. Colleagues, it's a few minutes after 10 o'clock. I'd ask Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Wisar, Mr. Parks, Mr. Reyes, and Mr. Rosendahl to please make their way down to the City Council chambers so we can begin our meeting this morning. Again, Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Wisar, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Padilla's excused, Mr. Parks, Mr. Reyes, and Mr. Rosendahl. Special thank you to Mr. Labange, Perry, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, and Zine for being here this morning on time. It is now 10:10. I'd ask Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Wisar, Mr. Parks, Mr. Reyes, and Mr. Rosendahl to please make their way down to council chambers so we can begin our meeting this morning. Again, good morning and welcome to City Hall and the council chambers. This is a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council. It is Wednesday, May 30th. Council meets 3 times a week, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and all meetings are open to the public. For those of you that cannot make it to City Hall, meetings are televised via cable on Channel 35 or can be viewed by visiting our website. The meeting is now in session. City Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Cardenas, Gruel, Han, Weezer, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, West, and Zion, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. First item of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Reyes moves, Ms. Perry seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Smith moves and Mr. Zine seconds.
Madam President, there is a flag salute that has been agendized for today.
Thank you. If I could ask Mr. Labange if he would do our flag salute today. If I could ask everyone to please rise.
Please rise, face the flag. Place your right hand over your heart. Get after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Next item of business. Colleagues, we will take public comment after we run through the agenda. Mr. Clerk.
On the regular agenda, on item 1, there is no action required. Nothing has been received by the City Clerk's office at this time.
Okay, so we will hold that on the desk. Is that correct?
Actually, no, Madam
Receive and
President.
file.
No action.
No action required. Thank you. Next order.
Item 2 is an item notice for public hearing.
We do have a card on item 2, so we will call that special.
Items 3 through 8 are street lighting district items, notice for public hearing. The recommendation for council action is to continue the hearings and ordinance to June 20th.
Those will be continued till June 20th. Next item?
6.
Should we take public comment on item number 6? Okay, we'll take comment on item number 6. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Item 9 is a public convenience and necessity item in Council District 2. The recommendation is to deny the application without prejudice.
Unless anyone wants to call that special, that item is now before us. Mr. Clerk, excuse me, Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
11 ayes.
Thank you. Next item.
Items 10 through 23 are items for which public hearings have been held. A motion is required on item 23 inasmuch as the Plum Committee submitted its report without recommendation.
Mr. Rosendahl? Yes. Item 23, do you wish for it to be considered? You want to call that special? And it requires a motion for it to be considered, or?
Yes, indeed, both. I would like to make it special, and obviously I want 10 votes to be able to discuss it.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, do we take that up now or just call it special?
It's just called special.
Okay, that item will be called special. Item
Great.
23.
Thank you very much.
Next item?
Madam President, you're still within that section, items 10 through 23, and I believe there was going to be a recommendation to continue item 12 1 week to June 6th.
Item 12 will be continued 1 week until June 6th. Thank you. Any other specials, colleagues? If not, Madam Clerk, open the roll on the remaining items, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
11 ayes.
Those items have been approved. Next item.
Items 24 through 38 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
We did apologize. There is a number 15, a number of cards. Unless someone calls it special, that item would not be called special, just on item number 15. Then wish to have that a public comment? There are a number of people that would like to have that in public comment? No? Okay, we'll hold that on the, just for a moment, we'll see if we need to reconsider. I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk, you're on items,
This is items 24 through 38.
okay. We do have an item, a card on item number 25. Will that be going in executive session? No, item 25?
I wanted to call special 25 and also 39, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The remainder of the items are before us. Any other, yes, Mr.
Yeah,
LeBlanc?
just on staff after 24 is complete, but you have to call it special. But I want staff to visit with me afterwards on the issues that I need to talk about. Thank you.
Okay. On item 24.
It's a test.
We have been having testing this morning. Hopefully that is still a test. Ms. Perry?
Needs to go forthwith once we voted on it.
Okay. Any other specials, colleagues? If not, she wanted to, the ones that were called special was item number 25 and item number 39. And after passing, Ms. Perry would like item number 26 to go forthwith. Right? Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
11 ayes.
Those items have been approved. Mr. Clerk, any other
Now, that
items?
would leave item 39, which is an item for which public hearing has not been held.
Yes, and Mr. Zine has called that item special as well, so we will call that special.
And that would take you back to public comment.
Great. We will ask the following individuals if they would please come forward. And Andrew, Arling, followed by Don Garza, followed by, I think it is Richard Robinson. Please.
Yes, good morning, Ms. Gruhl.
Hold on just one second. We'll see what this is.
Could you restart the clock?
Yes,
Thank you,
Please.
Ms. Gruhl.
you're welcome.
It is an honor, albeit unfortunate one, to be in front of this council again this morning. As I told this honorable assembly last week, my name is Andrew Allering, and I'm a candidate for the County of Los Angeles Board of Supervisors in the 1st District. I would like to refer to you as colleagues, but we're not. We, however, appears in a movement for good government in the city and county of Los Angeles. While I don't have a family legacy of greatness like Mr. Garcetti or Ms. Hahn, I do desire to and am serving my community. I also hold a master's in public administration from USC. And serving my community, I met my campaign manager, Mr. Miguel Guzman. Last week, I attended this meeting with Mr. Guzman and Stella, his fiancée. Last night, after our nonprofit provided 2,006 free food items for people in downtown at 3rd and Broadway, Mr. Guzman's daughter, Jade, wrote this. It says, "Dear Mom, I wish Dad was out of jail." Unfortunately, our police department arrested Mr. Guzman while he was campaigning on my behalf in front of the Biltmore Hotel last Friday. He's been jailed since. We will be filing for damages against this city. It saddens me to have a child write such a note, particularly when her father was doing nothing other than campaigning and exercising his rights under our state and federal constitutions. It is often said of people my age that we are America's future. That's wrong. Somos hoy, or in English, we are today. Mr. Guzman's daughter, Jade, is the future of America. And from what I have seen, the future is bright. I urge people to vote on June 6th, vote for county supervisor, and consider change by not re-electing incumbents. Additionally, I encourage members and residents of the county's 1st District to call or email their community concerns to my campaign at area code 213-880-9265 or email at andrew@scandrew.com. Together we can fix LA County and
Thank
say puede. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, before we go to our next speaker, Don, if you hold on just one second, we'd like to reconsider item number 15 to call it special to have a public hearing for those people who were present here today. So, Madam Clerk, if you could open the roll on reconsideration of item number 15, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
11 ayes.
Okay, that item and will now be called special, and we'll get to that item in the order of the other business. Thank you. Mr. Garza.
Boy, that sound sure does, makes you feel creepy, doesn't it? Ooh. No, I'm just here today as another gadfly, just say good morning. We had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Fortunately, it wasn't a very good week, but I survived. You know, I'm one of those souls that doesn't, not to say that I'm better than anybody else, but I don't self-medicate with drugs or alcohol or anything else. So I guess the only medication I have is to come here and yell at you guys. If I just get disrespected just a little bit, I should have remembered, Jan, that, this was the week that I should have stayed home. But somebody didn't remind me, Miss Perry. So, and I count on you to remind me about things like that. But on another note, I know you guys are going to present a motion tomorrow about abusive behavior and language here in council chambers. I saw it on the agenda. And I'm just wondering if there's actually going to be a quorum, because I know that a lot of you, using euphemisms, use a lot of abusive language towards each other when you debate. So I'm wondering if you will be in violation of that as well. I'm thinking probably, but we won't know because they'll be the big words. But all in all, I still love you guys, and enjoy yourselves. And I got a blog, so I don't need to be here unless I have to yell at somebody. Well, you got yelled at, and I saw you on TV talking about the Ellis Act. Mr. Rosendahl, that was cool. So, great guy. Catharsis is great. All right.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson.
Honorable Mayor, members, Richard Robinson, neighborhood organizer. I'm networking a community outreach program citywide. I reside in the 7-star motel at 1730 North La Brea in room numbers 104. I am working with the Taiwanese ambassador to Los Angeles presently in order to help my friend Robert Yu, the Taiwanese American owner of my residence, to protect his property from the dope dealers and prostitutes that are victimizing the Hollywood Boulevard and La Brea neighborhood area. Ma'am, because I have the honor of having visited former Governor Tommy Thompson's office in Milwaukee, Wisconsin during the last decade before he became President Bush's former Secretary of Health and Human Services, I had the honor of watching him solve his problem of homelessness in the communities of Milwaukee and their neighborhoods. The safe neighborhoods former Secretary Thompson established were brought about by establishing a managed care system of treatment centers. He has not only fed and housed his homeless, but also provided a system of medical and dental care. I believe that here locally, the former $1 Million Hotel at 5th and Main would be a good location for a community awareness and treatment service similar to that which former Mayor Willie Brown established in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson, for being here. Next speaker is Daphne Bolden, followed by Michael Hunt.
Thank you very much for your time. I represent the 501c3 Real Men Cook, which I hope you have in front of you, the document that I prepared. I want to first off thank Councilmember Rosendahl's office for being so supportive in helping me prepare this document, and Councilmember Labange's office for helping me to prepare the banners that will be hanging along Wilshire Boulevard. I am requesting very briefly chairs and tables. I also want as many members of council to participate in this event as celebrity chefs, and celebrity judges. I've recently returned to Los Angeles after 14 years. I am appalled by the race relationships we have here. And this is my first year spearheading this event. It has traditionally, after 17 years, been an African-American event. This year I'm trying to make it a multinational event, bringing in all of the Los Angeles community. Therefore, your support coming out and being involved would be greatly appreciated. And thank you for the chairs and tables. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Mr. Hunt?
Good morning again, back on the record. On January 31st, we declared Venice Beach Oceanfront Walk from Santa Monica Boardwalk Street as the official free speech zone, and that was protected up under the First Amendment. As of yet, you guys have yet to prove that it's really being protected up under the First Amendment. Number two, that I was probably elected for Venice Boardwalk and official to take on the challenge. If you guys remember back in 1997, Harry Perry in the Ninth Circuit Court overturned the decision. The First Amendment has not changed, but if you notice something being synonymous about this, both Harry Perry and I was both African Americans, you know, and it seemed like that they made this ordinance just to get rid of most of us African Americans on the boardwalk. We are protected, and number two, that I will be going to the Ninth Circuit Court with this, as well as Harry Perry did. It's a shame that out of 150 vendors that they arrest African Americans first, and that nobody else has never went to trial besides the African Americans, and it's been synonymous. Like I said, Harry Perry versus the city of Los Angeles. Bernard Parks, you were the chief of police when you got sued at that time. I think that you should really speak up on it and say that this ordinance is unconstitutional, and that we need to make a change in this ordinance as soon as possible. Number two, that the lottery is in jeopardy right now because New York, Seattle, and Boston, they both kicked all of their lottery system out based on appeal. So I'm looking forward to a good fight, a very good, clean fight. And Los Angeles City Attorney, I'm ready.
Thank you. Next speakers are Laura Burns, David Ewing, and Laura Salagi.
Madam President, Laura Burns, are you going to have public comment on item 23?
Yes, we are. Would you like to be considered under item 23?
No, I'm going to speak to that. I put in a card. I would just like to say something about the Ellis Act and a resolution that you passed last December, shortly after all of the tenants at Lincoln Place were evicted. The City Council passed a resolution asking, I believe, for the Housing Department, but I'm not sure which department, to recommend changes that you could bring to the legislature to the Ellis Act. And I hope that you are on this. This is very important. This is becoming an extremely big issue as thousands and thousands of people are displaced, over 5,000 last year, and it's looking like it's going to be a bigger year this year. My recommendation to you is that you ask that the Ellis Act be voided, ended, because, and that you are returned to the situation that you had in 1985, where when there is an emergency and the public welfare is involved, you have the right to make land use law. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ewing?
Good morning. My name is David Ewing. I'm a member of the Venice Community Coalition. I live in Venice, longtime resident. I'd like to second what Laura Burns just said about the Ellis Act. You have had the ability, ladies and gentlemen, since 1999, I believe, to amend the or to build in tenant protections to the municipal implementation of the Ellis Act, and you find yourselves in positions now where you're reacting to situations over which you have less control than you should, because proactive measures have not been taken in advance. I really want to make my comment about the use of executive session, and it seems to me that a lot of fights are taking, a lot of the real debates that are going on now in City Council on important issues are taking place behind closed doors in executive session. And this is essentially it amounts to classification. It amounts to an undoing of the Brown Act, certainly in spirit, and an undoing of the principles of open government. When every real public debate, the important debates, the decisive debates on public issues, take place in executive session instead of in front of the public. And thank you very much for considering that.
Thank you. Ms. Szilagyi?
I'm Laura Szilagyi, Venice Community Coalition, and I'm kind of repeating what the last two people said about the Ellis Act. The City Council should enact Ellis Act protections for tenants, and this is really terrible that you haven't done it so far. And the other thing is that I think a condo conversion moratorium needs to be put in place, and this would discourage the kind of speculation and displacement of people that's occurring now. Thanks.
Mr. Tuttle, Rick Tuttle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is general comment period. I just walked in. All right,
It is general comment.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by saying hello to my friends who are here today, and we get the week started again after a couple days off, and we've all been out there for Memorial Day thinking of our vets who've done so much for our country. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have the opportunity, thanks to our good friend Councilman Bill Rosendahl, to do something for the people of the city of Los Angeles. The matter he'll bring before you, and I take it, I walked into the end of the last discussion, there's some discussion as whether or not you'll have to go into closed session to seek the advice of counsel and so on. I'm not going to enter that side of the debate particularly. I happen to generally think that the more sunshine, the better, as most of you know. But what I do want to do is commend Councilman Rosendahl, who in a way is standing for each of us who live in the city of Los Angeles. Each of us who on our watch, and it happens to be a watch limited by 8 years, at least in the council, and our watch in city government, have the responsibility for the men and women and children who live in our community, in our districts, in the city as a whole. Today, what Bill Rosendahl is talking about is taking the steps he can with this Rosendahl proposal, which is to record the conditions of the track map. That's essentially the issue before us, about which you will be receiving counsel. That's one phase of a much larger battle, which is to protect the rights of tenants in the city of Los Angeles. In this case, this is a real David and Goliath fight. And I say this respectfully. I have good friends involved with one of the most powerful lobbying law firms in the city, with tremendous consultants, good friends, many of them, social friends, with a company, Aimco, which has distinguished and powerful leadership, and it's probably the largest and most powerful developer in the country. Keep this in mind. The evictions they've already done are the largest in the history of the city of Los Angeles, save possibly Chavez Ravine. We're in that league. And what's at stake today, the steps we'll be taking, is the plight of a large number of senior citizens and disabled who are living there. This really gets to the question of the heart of the city. Please support the Rosendahl proposal. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for your forbearance for the extra time. I
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. Nice to see you, as always. That closes public comment. Colleagues, just as an FYI, in item number 6, the card was put in the wrong place, so that item actually will just be continued until the 20th, not called special today. Our next item, Mr. Clerk.
Item 2 is called special for a card from the public.
Yes, we have 4 cards. Don Garza, Wilson Liu, Francis Hashimoto, and Ellen Endo. They could come forward. Mr. Garza? No? You're okay. All right. Wilson Liu?
Good morning, council members. I'm here on behalf of the Little Tokyo Business Improvement District, and we're going into our 3rd year, and I'm looking for your vote to support it for our 3rd year operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Yeah, brevity always appreciated. Francis? A familiar face in City Council.
I'd like to thank all of you for your support and urge you to please vote in favor of another year of the BID. It'll be the third year, and it's been very successful. So we thank you very much and hope that you will vote for the item before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen Endo?
Hope the rest of your day goes like this, but I'm also in favor of the Little Tokyo bid and welcome your support. We do a lot with actually very little, but with the city clerk's office helping us along the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That item is now, you want to still speak, Don? Okay.
The Tokyo bid, I think it should continue, and they're good people, and they do wonderful, wonderful things for people. I know you read the story of Nathaniel Ayers and what happened with him and how he got his housing. So, yeah, I want to see the Little Tokyo bid continue.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, open the roll on item number 2, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Those items have been approved. Colleagues, if I can ask for your assistance, we want to take item number 25 and 39 together. We will do that item now for public comment cards. Roger, if I could call Roger John Diamond, followed by Jamal Haddad. Now you have put cards in for both items. Would you like your 4 minutes together, Mr. Diamond?
What would be more convenient for you?
Whichever you would like. You can speak your 4 minutes, and then Mr. Haddad, who also has cards for both, can also have his 4 minutes.
4 minutes total or 4 minutes for each?
4 minutes for each.
Okay, so it's a total of 8 minutes.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and so this is your public comment time.
Thank you very much. On January 31 of this year, Councilman Zine, without notice to my client or to me, made a motion with Councilman Reyes seconding it, directing the city attorney and the building department to take action. Madam President?
Yes, sir, he was just making sure you understood it was 4 minutes per person. That includes both items. So you're getting 2 minutes for item 25 and 2 minutes for item 39. So 4 minutes total. So we stop the clock.
Could you start the clock again, because I was speaking, but you were speaking to the clerk, so.
Please, we can start the clock again.
Thank you very much. January 31 of this year, Councilman Zine made a motion to shut down essentially the Frisky Kitty, but that motion was made without notice to me or my client. There was a public hearing without our participation. So we filed a lawsuit in the federal court to have the procedure declared invalid. To make a very long story short, Mr. Jamal Haddad, who's seated, will be coming up in a moment, had previously sued Councilman Zine for illegal search and seizure for having entered his establishment without a search warrant. The problem we have here, if I can get Councilman Labange's attention, I see you speaking. Thank you. Well, I think it's rude when somebody's addressing you to be talking to somebody else. It's just not right.
Staff about an issue, so speak to the microphone.
Yes. Please, Mr. Diamond, continue.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the attention. The problem, the irony, of course, is that we filed the federal lawsuit because we weren't given the opportunity to be heard. Coming here and speaking to people who don't listen is also a form of not being heard. In any event, the City Council voted to try to shut down the Frisky Kitty. We object to the procedure that the City Council is following now, because we are not given adequate notice that you'd have something to consider today on the merits of the issue of whether the Frisky Kitty should be able to continue to operate. It is operating properly, but we were not told by the city attorney that we could actually address the council today on the merits of the case, and we're not being given that chance. I have constant letters back and forth between me, the city clerk, and the city attorney on this issue, and to save time, I simply refer to those by reference, request that all the city attorney letters that I sent to the city attorney be included as exhibits for today's hearing, and also my letter to the city clerk be included as an exhibit. The irony of all this is that while all of you are very concerned about saving tax dollars, in general, when you run for office and when you speak to the media, you always talk about saving tax money. When a specific concrete proposal is before you that involves taxpayer expenditures, you never seem to vote the right way. In this particular case, the Frisky Kitty's been operating successfully for 7 years at the same location. The people in the area wanted to continue operating. When the media was called on this issue last November, when a press release was issued, Channel 2 and some other channels interviewed the people in the area, and they all said they were for the Frisky Kitty. It didn't affect them in any way. Why does the City Council now want to direct the City Attorney to take action to shut down an ongoing business that generates tax revenue for the city? The argument of Mr. Zine is that there is an apartment building within 500 feet of the establishment. But the apartment building is across a huge expanse, a parking lot separated by trees, fences, facing the opposite direction. And the people in that apartment building, if given a chance to speak today, but we didn't know this matter would be on the agenda for full consideration, and I'm not sure it is, would all tell you unanimously that they want the Frisky Kitty to continue operating. They provide security for the area, and your ordinance doesn't specify how you measure the distance. You have a distance measurement for adult businesses near churches, schools, playgrounds, and so forth. It says you measure in a straight line from property line, from the building of the adult business to the property line of the sensitive use. But that measurement doesn't exist for measuring to residential properties. The code is silent on how you measure. It's ambiguous. So there's no reason to have to direct the city attorney to take action to shut down the Frisky Kitty. In addition to that, the resolution, item number 39, does not dovetail with a resolution passed by you on January 31, in that the resolution of January 31, 2006 has 2 clauses in it. The first clause says you're directing the city attorney and the Building and Safety Department to take action, but item 39 only refers to the first clause. It doesn't refer to the second clause. So if you adopt Resolution 39, you're leaving dangling in place the second clause of the resolution of January 31, 2006.
Thank you,
We do
Mr.
object. We'd like more time, and we'd like the opportunity to bring witnesses down and address the council on this very important issue.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond. Jamal Haddad. And again, Mr. Haddad, you have a total of 4 minutes. 4 minutes total.
I didn't know the time started already.
It'll be started at 4 minutes.
Okay. I have Honorable Mr. President and City Council members, good morning.
We'll
I
hold
have
your,
4
we'll hold,
pages
sir,
to read
we'll
here,
hold
so
your,
I
we'll
hope
hold your
I
time.
have-
Just a minute. We'll hold your time. It's okay. Test is over.
Can
Okay.
we get the time reset,
We,
please?
sir, we held the time when the thing went off. We stopped the time, so please go ahead.
I do not know of anybody that the city violated his rights repeatedly more than me. To quote Mr. Zine a few months ago, saying to one newspaper, "Checkmate to us." I am a chess champion of Jordan for the year 1978 at the youth centers. And I tell you, this is not a chess game. You are only playing with our lives and our livelihoods, but also with the Constitution. If it's a chess game, I will call it a stalemate. Therefore, we ask the city twice in writing if they would meet with us to consider settlements. But that's a long subject. I don't think I have enough time, so I'm going to skip. But that's an option for you to consider. The city council took a decision on January 31st without us being here. You violated the due process and my constitutional rights. If it's a game, do not play games with the Constitution. Do not play games with us. You throw in smoking screens, smoking mirrors, and you're good at it. I'm so confused about how much time I have here, so I'm going to try to do the best of it. Now, that vote happened when we're not here. And you violated my constitutional right. And now, why we're here? If you want to rescind the Constitution, why the city attorney in his letter dated February 7 said there is no reason and no basis to rescind? What is the truth? Why you keep changing your minds? The agenda said receive and file, then consider, and then rescind. What is this? I remember once the present mayor was standing up there, Mr. Villagosa. He said, "What are we doing here?" I don't think anybody has a clue. You know what else? You're wasting taxpayers' money. When you rescind this vote, I'm entitled to my lawyer fees, and I'm going to file a claim form for my money. So who are you wasting? My money or the taxpayers' money? I wish I had more time. Plus, we don't have a full opportunity here to be meaningful. This hearing is not going to be meaningful if you didn't give us enough time to prepare witnesses. What is this? You had a supplemented agenda after closing, and then you change the information on the website and you write something else on the board? What kind of games you playing? Seems to me this is a phony hearing to tell the federal court, oh, we heard them. No, you didn't hear us. You didn't hear us the first time, and this time, I don't know who you're going to hear. The city attorney told the federal judge, oh, this is nothing. Why are you changing your mind now? If you didn't break the law, and some of you think they are above the law, let me tell you, you're not above the law. My time expired. I wish I had more.
Thank you, Mr. Haddad. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Zine, followed by Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Madam President. I request that we move the motion forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zine. Mr. Rosendahl?
Thank you, Madam President. I don't know anything about this issue. Nobody briefed me on this issue from the City Attorney's Office or any other department in the city. I don't know if Mr. Wesson or Mr. Huizar know anything more than I do, but I don't know anything. So I don't feel able to participate in this process unless somebody wants to get up and explain this whole thing to me so I know what we're talking about.
Well, the item, again, is before us and has been to committee. At this point in time, if you have questions you'd like to ask, otherwise we'll take the vote on this item. Mr. Zine has asked us to, excuse me, sorry, committee. My apologies. My apologies.
I just don't know where to
it's
begin to be candid with you. It's all fresh moment from public speaking. Maybe one of my colleagues wants to tell us what it is or whatever, so we can have a better view of it. Otherwise, I have to abstain from voting.
Okay. Mr. Zine.
Madam President, if I could have the city attorney maybe give a brief explanation. I know this has been going through this council for a long period of time. I don't know if Mr. Rosendahl and some other colleagues were here when these matters began, but maybe a representative from the City Attorney's Office can sum it up and give the explanation for some of my colleagues. I'm well aware of all the factors on this. Madam City Attorney.
Claudia Culling, City Attorney's Office. The only matter before you.
Mr. Diamond, please have a seat. She's speaking into the...
Well, that's the name my parents gave me. I'm pretty sure I have them correctly.
The microphone is now on.
Claudia Culling, City Attorney's Office. The matter before you is a motion by the council member to rescind a part of a previously adopted motion. The point of that is that the charter vests the authority to prosecute crimes in the City Attorney's Office, and that while the council member and the council, when they adopted that motion, felt strongly about the issue, the discretion is really with our office and not with the City Council. So the council member introduced a motion to rescind that part of the motion and to have the report back to you about how prosecution is going come later in the process. That's really all that's before you. And an opportunity, there's public comment, but that's all that's before you.
Could you just explain a little bit more about the issue itself?
What issue? The Frisky Kitty zoning issue?
Yeah, I don't know.
That we're in the midst of prosecution, or in the midst of enforcement of that matter, and I would leave that to our criminal branch of our office, but I don't think that that's before you now to go into a lot of detail about it.
Okay, yeah, I don't need a lot of detail. I don't even know what the Frisky Kitty is. Is it a cat or is it a building?
Asha Greenberg with the City Attorney's Office. It's an adult entertainment business. There was protracted litigation about it.
Is there anything else I need to know to vote on this from a city standpoint, since you're saying that it's basically a city attorney's matter and this gives the flexibility of the city attorney? Is that what we're hearing?
The city attorney has the authority in this matter, and it was not ever vested in the city council, and so all we're doing is cleaning the record up by you're retracting that part of the motion that it purported to tell us how to exercise our discretion.
Great. Anything more you want to add to that?
I think that's about it. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Zine, did you want to say anything else or take a vote on this item?
I'd just like to encourage my colleagues to support the motion and to vote yes on it. Thank you.
So we will have both item number 25 and, excuse me, item number 39 before us at this time. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Those items have been approved. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Item 15 was called special for cards from the public.
Item 15, I believe this is in your district. Mr. Weisar, would you like to say anything first before we have public comment? Okay. Call the following individuals: Godwin Ewunze, Bobby Glanton Smith, Amy Minter. Mintier? If you could please come forward to.
Yeah, he's walking okay. I thought he was going to die. So you still want the water? You could have.
We will call everyone's cards. The first person, Godwin. Godwin?
My name is Godwin Iwunze. The guy building 8 houses on Parish. And I'm here to urge to plead with the council to support the Plum Committee's recommendation in denying the appeal filed by the so-called environmental group. It is a frivolous appeal with no merit. All this appeal has done is cost me nothing but money. For 2.5 years, these fellows are fighting the recommendation of the zoning administrator who approved the project. At the Plum Committee was able to get information from all the department heads, and they've been able to to certify that the road we're building is within the approved plan. So I really urge the council to deny this appeal and follow the recommendation of the Plum Committee. The road we're building, the houses we're building are safe. All these guys have done is continue filing appeal to waste my money and time. So in the interest of peace and justice, deny the appeal so that my construction will continue on these 8 houses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wenze. Bobby Glanton-Smith, followed by Amy Mantier.
Good morning. My name is Bobby Glanton Smith. I work with an organization called Recycling Black Dollars. I've known Mr. Windsor for a number of years, and in addition to being an excellent builder, he's socially conscious, and what he's done with this project is to include people from various segments of our society and community in the development of this particular project once he's able to finally get started on it. He has spent the last 2.5 years following the procedures and the guidelines that's set forth by the City of Los Angeles, and at this time, I think it's in the interest of all the citizens of Los Angeles that this project moves forward. He's spent an inordinate amount of money, and the reward to the city is not only the 8 houses, but the employment of people from various parts of the city and different construction disciplines. So I would suggest that we allow this project to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Amy Minter.
Good morning. I would like to request that all of those speaking in opposition to the project have a collective 10 minutes, and that we, because we'll all be speaking for different amounts of time, if that would be possible.
My assumption is there's probably more than 5 people. Is that correct?
Right. And
Okay.
so we just start the timer at the beginning, and we each, when we finish, it keeps going.
We will do that then, for those of you that are in support, so that we'll do the 10 minutes. Okay, so that will include, let me just, before we start the time, Amy Schermhorn, Alyssa Smith, correct? Betsy Mines, Harold Radiloff. It's probably best if you all come up to there because we will begin. Marge Payne, Jovan Ketchman. Is Brian Fitzberg part of the group as well? Okay. Georgina Miranda. Denny Jeremick, Cheryl Roberts, Mike Giever. Okay. I think you're all on that side, okay? We'll set 10 minutes on both clocks.
Good morning, honorable council members. My name is Amy Mintier. I'm here from Chatton Brown and Karstens, representing the Hillside Environmental and Safety Coalition, urging you deny approval of the Parrish Avenue project and grant Hesk's appeal of this project. The MND prepared for the Parrish Avenue project should not be adopted. Public Resources Code Section 2115 requires an EIR be prepared for any project when a fair argument can be made that the project may have a significant adverse impact on the environment. Here, substantial evidence has been submitted in written comments and will be presented today that the Parrish Avenue project may have significant traffic, fire hazard, biological, and cumulative impacts, necessitating the preparation of an EIR. The project may have traffic impacts because, as found by the Department of Transportation, East Parrish Avenue is a significantly substandard road. The developer has been required to widen the street in front of the project to 20 feet, which is still less than the standard 28 feet of width required. However, many portions of Parrish Avenue leading up to the project site will remain less than 20 feet in width, with parking allowed on one side of the road. This only allows one car to pass at a time, while the vehicle going the opposite direction must pull over and wait. Adding additional cars to this already hazardous situation, where there are hairpin turns and sharp turns like that, will create significant traffic impacts. Further, the addition of numerous new homes in the area, all using the same access route, traffic impacts may also be cumulatively significant. These cumulative impacts have not been discussed, let alone mitigated. Thus, the Environmental Quality Act requires preparation of an EIR. Because of the substandard condition of the Parrish Avenue, fire hazard impacts may be significant. The fire department has a goal response time of 5 minutes, while actual response times in this area is closer to 25 minutes. Adding additional traffic and causes of fire will intensify this hazardous situation. The project may also have significant biological impacts. Ecological expert Jeff Chapman submitted a report to the council discussing species found on the project site. California black walnut trees were found on the site. They are protected trees under the Los Angeles Municipal Code. Potential impacts to these trees were not discussed or mitigated by the MND. Mr. Chapman also found several species of special concern on the site that were not acknowledged in the MND. It was for all of these reasons that this site was downzoned in the Northeast Community Plan to prevent these impacts. It is also for these reasons that the Hillside Environmental and Safety Coalition urges you to grant its appeal and deny the Parrish Avenue project. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker, just state your name for the record when you come up, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Skirmahorn. I filed the appeal. I would love to urge all you honorable council to please send this appeal back to Plum. The reason being, we have given many papers regarding this appeal, and it deserved another look. I want you to mostly pay attention to the roadway. It is impossible. This very morning, another dumpster has been dumped on Lavelle Drive with no wheel, nothing. It cannot be moved. A truck cannot go by. The garbage truck couldn't do their work this morning. It's impossible. Please deny the Plum decision and send it back to Plum. I think that's what needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. I have a written statement in case I can't talk fast enough. I am here today. My name is Betsy Mines. I live in Glassell Park. I'm here today to request your vote in support of the appeal by the Hillside and Environmental Safety Coalition. The MND for this project is inadequate. The ZA states there will be no significant impact from the addition of 8 homes with reduced side yards. Yet these homes require the completion of a new roadway on the rim of Moss Canyon, an undeveloped green space. Granting variances to build on substandard RE20 lots intended for very low density creates a cumulative impact that clearly justifies an EIR. The extension of Parrish Avenue by the developer does not mitigate existing traffic and safety concerns given the narrow winding portions of Parrish and Lavelle leading to Hines or Yorkshire, which are the ingress and egress routes in this hillside area. The impact on traffic circulation also justifies an EIR. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Marge Piani. I live on Moss Avenue in Glassell Park. I'm here to urge you to vote against the Plum Committee's recommendation in this matter. The Plum Committee requested reports from involved departments, traffic, fire, building, and safety. When asked, each representative admitted that they are not mandated to consider cumulative impact, but only parcel-specific data. CEQA requires consideration of cumulative impact. This appeal asks only that the city adhere to state law, and to deny the appeal would be a breach of state law. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Harold Radeloff. I live at 3506 Lavelle Drive. I purchased my house last year. I have over 100 foot of frontage on Lavelle. I love the area. I love the house. The only problem I have is getting to it. I have to travel on Yorkshire Terrace, which is at points 14 or 15 feet. It's a quite steep road, blind curves, no sight distance. By the way, I'm a retired environmental engineer. And to say that there are no cumulative impacts of this project is ludicrous. That road alone, you take your life in your hands every time you go up and down. Fortunately, I have a shift car and I do it in first gear. But to say that there are no cumulative impacts is ludicrous, and it should go back to the Plum Committee for a full EIR. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elisa Smith. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I am asking you to grant our appeal and to vote no on this, or with great respect, to send it back to Plum to do further investigations. I've been a member of the neighborhood council and active in the community for 5 years. I've been to many ZA hearings, and with all due respect, I learn something new from every hearing I go to, from every time I come to City Hall, and I value all the information and the forthrightness and also the generosity of the people that I've worked with here. But in all those years, it actually took until about 6 months ago, or 3 months ago, when I found the EIR that is relative to this undeveloped canyon 3 miles from downtown, a village, I call my neighborhood a village by the river. I know we're not the first people to live there. I know there's records of people 28,000 years ago were living in Los Angeles, but there is no modern contemporary development. In the EIR, which I hadn't seen until a few months ago, it states specifically, individual sites with low, medium 1 density residential land use designation had their land use designation changed to limit residential densities to prevailing density to preserve neighborhood character and to limit residential densities to protect inaccessible or sensitive areas such as hillsides. Basically, they took RE1 zoning that had been a blanket for the area and downzoned it to R20. The applicant received variances, which basically are enabling him to double the density for his 8 sites. We're not against development. We want thoughtful development. We need an EIR. Everything is illuminated by the past. To date, I can count 19 developments that are slated for Moss Canyon, no EIR. 4 more lots are for sale right now.
And I know we have you have about 1 minute left. I know there's one more speaker I think you'd like to.
You want to take yours? Okay.
Okay,
it's one of those things, intuition, something is wrong here. There are neurobiologists who are researching that intuition is an actual measurable thing. Thank you. Please vote no.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir, our final speaker.
Hi, my
on this
name is
side.
Mike Keeler. I live at 3572 Lavelle. The crux of this issue is there is no cumulative impact assessment done in this area. There's clearly proven that there is cumulative impact with the amount of projects that are there right now. Jose even admits that in this draft summary report that I passed out to all of you and I highlighted. He says, he suggests the current city planning process may not take into account the full cumulative impacts of projects developed in the Northeast area. Okay, so that's there, that's established. But then the really motivating factor here was that they said the city attorney advised it's arbitrary or not capricious. It can't be that. So in other words, is this developer responsible for it? That is at the crux of the issue. It either complies or it doesn't comply with CEQA. It does not comply with CEQA, and it would be arbitrary to not, it would be the legal obligation for the city council to take it back to Plum and review it because it does not comply with CEQA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for your 10 minutes together. And Betsy, nice to see you. Neil Simon, our last speaker. Mr. Simon?
That's Neil Smith.
I'm sorry.
Neil
Mr. Smith.
And I'm with Regional Housing Development. We urge you to reject this appeal by this Hillside group. Working with the developer.
Can I stop you just for 1 minute? Stop the clock for a minute. The people behind you with you as well, did you fill out cards? I didn't see any cards. I did mention your names? Okay. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The developer has done his homework along with the city. We did get approval from the fire, geological, planning, and building departments. In fact, the DOT determined it was mathematically impossible to have a cumulative impact based on the number of cars and the amount of houses in the area. We also want to make note that there are 2 different means of access to the development. The development is not accessed through one narrow street. There are at least 2 means of access. We also want to note that there are no trees on the site. This thing I recently heard about California walnut trees, that is entirely not true. In addition, we just want to note that the city and the developer have both thoroughly done their homework. It's been 2.5 years in the making, maybe even 3. And we really feel that it's time for all of us to move on and let us get our building permit and simply move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Fitzberg. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak on this matter. I concur with the recommendations for council action. I'm in support of this project, and I agree that the appeal should be denied and that the project should be allowed to continue. I'm very familiar with the area and with the project. The decision of the zoning administrator to approve the project was based on the ZA's knowledge and experience, and as well, he bases his findings on the reports and findings of licensed professionals and city department heads. And it seems, in my opinion, that opinions based on emotion and intuition should not supersede the opinions that are based on licensed professionals and city department heads who have opinions that are not based on emotions and intuition. And I hope that you vote to deny the appeal and allow the project to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Roberts, and I would like the opinion of the Plum Committee upheld. This project has gone through every possible scrutiny, and some of the issues are the traffic flow. A new road is being built over an existing fire road right now. It's going to be paved. It's going to stabilize the hill. The engineering department has looked at this and said this whole project will stabilize the hill. The wildlife will not be compromised. The fire department has said that the new roads and access will make access easier. The problems that are up there now are really having to do with the existing roads being too small and the houses that were built not to code a long time ago. Those houses have nothing to do with this project. This project is to present-day codes. They're very stable, and they're not going to be causing either geological or traffic problems. So I urge you to go with the City Council Plum Committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jovan Ketzman, and I'm owner on Richardson Drive, which is across the street of those parish developments. My opinion is that this project should be supported because it was projected and built as per latest standards which City of Los Angeles requires. City of Planning Commission, Specific Commission, Building and Safety, and as we know, City of Los Angeles has the biggest standards to approve such a developments and give some kind of permits. So if we cannot trust those people which has experience and working in those institutions for years on their opinion that something is approved and is good to be worked over there, I don't know to whom we can trust. That's one thing. The other thing, all impacts what those people talking about is actually because they're parking their cars on streets, and because new developments actually is bringing improvements for all that area. Firefighting will be much better, streets will be better because will be approved. All those houses has parkings in houses, so I don't think so that any specific environmental impact will be done 8 houses in the neighborhood. Only will improve that neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That's our next public speaker card. The item before us at this point in time is to deny the appeal before us. Mr. Wisar.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I heard this item on Plum Committee since I sit in Plum Committee, and let me tell you, I am very concerned about what is going on in the northeast portion of my district, which includes Mount Washington and Glassell Park. There are some very narrow roads up there which present some health and safety issues when emergency vehicles want to reach that area in the event of an emergency. And as I went through this process, I realized that our process is not taking into account the cumulative impacts of a number of applications that go forward for new developments. And we're talking about cumulative impacts as a term of art in a legal term of art under the California Environmental Quality Act, and a lot of the developments that are happening up there do not take that into account. They get by with a mitigated negative declaration. I'm asking our planning department right now and our city attorney's office, how do we as a city take into account from a policy perspective these cumulative impacts? Because a few years ago, you didn't have as many applications to build in these hillsides. It wasn't profitable. Now it is. You could put in the extra due diligence, the extra soil test, the extra whatever it takes to build on hillsides because it's profitable now. People will do it. there's been a big debate about the number of applications that are actually going in. That's a point of contention, but let me tell you, it has really quadrupled or even gone up 10 times the number of applications we've seen up there to develop in an area that presents some health and safety concerns for our safety vehicles. So as I sat through the Plum Committee and listened through this issue, I realized that our city does not take into account cumulative impacts. Our process does take into account parcel by parcel. It doesn't take into account that next month we're going to hear 10 new applications for development. What happens to those narrow roads? What happens to the need to preserve our emergency vehicles' right to go up there in event of emergency? But as I went through this process, I also asked our city departments to come forward in Plum and give us their analysis, a more thorough analysis of these issues that were raised. And I want to thank our departments for doing that. The Fire Department, the Department of Transportation, our Planning Department, Department of Building and Safety, and others gave a more thorough explanation to Plum. And they all recognized that it does present some health and safety issues, but under the process we have and under the legal requirements, along with our city attorney, that this is what we have before us today. So I recommended in Plum, as I will today, for us to go forward with this project today, approve Plum's recommendation, but at the same time, in the near future, I'll be coming with a report to Plum to work with our planning department and other departments on how do we thoroughly take into account the cumulative impacts on a policy level, not only a legal one. Because if we only look at the legal cumulative impacts, we're not going to get to the real critical issues that most of our residents are talking about. I'm not happy with what's before me today. It's a project that started in the process before I was elected, but I want to make very clear, I don't like diversions from the North Hillside or Northeast Side Hillside Ordinance or the specific plan in the area that allows for these types of developments to happen. I don't like the easy stamp of approval that we often give to these without really looking at some of these real concerns that residents have in those areas. So hopefully, through these discussions we have with the Planning Department and Building and Safety, we'll come up to a policy discussion whereby we truly do take into account the cumulative impacts. But at this time, I would ask that we go forward with the Plum Committee recommendation and the City Attorney's recommendation after a thorough discussion with them that we should move forward with this item and talk more about the policy discussions about what we can do to address the larger issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Huizar. That item is now before us. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Thank you. That item has now been approved. Colleagues, our next item is item number 23. I'd ask that we have a 10-minute public comment period. I know I want to introduce Mr. Rosendahl for a moment for his presentation. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Madam President, for this opportunity to speak and to have a thorough and open process on a very significant issue impacting residents in the 11th District. If I could, Madam President, I would like to just let a video start this off, and I'd like the city attorneys and the city planners to sit at the table as we go through this. If we could ask them to come on forward. And have a nice front row seat, and we'll move from there. I see there's somebody from the city planning office. Here comes the city attorney's office. And so if we could, we'd like to start with the video.
People that are living here, elderly people, the wives of veterans, are the people that created our system, our society, and these are the very people that will be displaced and removed in many ways from our social structure here.
This was such a happy place. It really was. There's a lot of young people that lived here. They were just starting out. They were just starting to make a living and everything. and they got threatened out. And they absolutely wonderful young people. It was so wonderful having them, and the young people with children. It was wonderful. I saw kids grow up here.
Sheriff's Department, we're here for eviction. Open the door. Occupants in apartment number 4, come to the door. This is the Sheriff's Department, we're here for eviction. Charlie County Sheriff's Department, here for a court order eviction. You inside apartment 4, open the door now. No, not yet. Sheriff's Department inside, you go inside and make yourself known.
I think this is just sort of the end of, as I said, 16 years of really living in a terrific community with a lot of great neighbors, and kind of a very sad day. Sheriff swept up and down Penmore Avenue and locked out a ton of people today. Currently, they're next door at one of my neighbors' homes, locking them out. So that's it.
People frightened here? What are we?
You're with us.
Rita, you okay?
Yeah, I have to go.
I know you have to go. Everything's fine.
to go to the
It's
doctor.
gonna happen. So, you just don't worry about it, okay?
I love you.
I love you too,
I
Rita.
love you
Okay,
guys.
you take care now.
I love you guys.
Occupants number 2, come to the door. Sheriff's Department, here for eviction. Open the door. Locksmith.
I can't believe this is happening. This is heartbreaking. You know, I've been here 9 years. I'm just heartbroken.
The Lord says to us that we approach problems with humility. And what is humility for us? For you, yes, a very tragic situation has happened, and yet you are saying to all of us, we don't just give up. We don't just say, well, that's it, and okay, we go forward. With the faith that you have in the Lord, in each other, then you do form a very formidable light to shed, as we say in Spanish, no de brazos caídos, not with your arms down, but moving forward, praying, doing, writing, talking, and now we live in America. We no longer need to be afraid.
I have lived here 25 years, and maybe 26 now, and I have met many people throughout this complex, and what I've discovered is that Young people who had moved in here, been here maybe even just a year, said to me oftentimes, besides older people, that they loved being here, that they lived elsewhere where neighbors never even knew each other. Here they knew each other. They felt cared about. We care about each other. We're there for each other.
My name is Rose Murphy, and I've been at Lincoln Place over 40 years. I hope to keep coming back for these meetings, and I have a special interest in here. And I'm so proud of our Tenants Association for the long, hard fight they've done for us, and all of the lawyers that have helped us. And, this is wonderful. The community, all this together will help to keep these people still in place.
I'm 74 years old, and I've been living here for 32 years. And I hope that we stay here, for life, because I don't have no place to go. No money to pay, a higher rent. So I hope everything gets settled, and we can live in peace now. We need peace and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, colleagues, for allowing me to share this video with you. As you all know, I came into the City Council about 11 months ago now. Sometimes I feel it's like 11 years, or 11 days, depending upon the moment. Many things I knew nothing about. Some things I've learned by the seat of my pants as the experience of an elected official forces you to do. Early on in this process on Lincoln Place, I met with the tenants, and I showed from my personal feeling, what you just saw in this video, that seniors and disabled I worry about, and I think that's part of the role of an elected official, is to take an interest in their constituents. From the very beginning, I've met with AMCO, I've met with the tenants, I've met with all kinds of groups, and with our planning department and our city attorney's office. And we're at a point now where the clock is very close to midnight. As you might know, when you saw the sheriffs in that video, on December the 6th, about 52 families were evicted. A couple of days later, another 4 families were evicted, which basically left seniors and disabled left. They were to be evicted on March 20th, but we were able to work with AMCO to extend it to the end of May. And the reason was, as both times when I tried to bring people together, it was an effort to find some kind of a compromise that worked for all forces. But on May the 5th, the State Commission on Cultural and Historic Designation redesignated as cultural and historic, and so whatever opportunities I saw in my process at that moment have become less. I always believe there's hope, and there is hope until the last breath of air that we all breathe. So I'm always hopeful about things. However, saying that, I did meet with the tenants over the weekend and was very clear about the picture that we're presently in front of, and I'm not misleading anyone about the realities of how things are done. So if I could, before the public speaks, is ask both the planning department and the city attorney's office, as best you can in the sunshine here, not in closed session, I want you to describe, if you look at my letter that I just passed out to you as well as to the communities and to my colleagues, some history here. I'm new. This thing has been going on for 19 years. I know it took various levels of action in the last few years, and I know that there's new people in the play. And if I could ask planning if they could tell us the most recent 5 years, what the story is, if you can do that, since you've all been around through that period. I know there was a guy named Bismo who owned something or another, and then I know AMCO came in and became a partner. And I'd just like to know the history as you see it, and as the history I outlined in my letter, which is in the press's hand as well, if it's all accurate or not.
Thank you, Councilman Rosendahl. Councilman Gruhl, members of the council, Emily Gabaletti for the Planning Department. I have about 6 years of experience in the division of land, so I will relay to you my experience of Lincoln Place subsequent to being put in charge of the subdivision section of the Planning Department. In 2002, the city was ordered by court following a suit, which the city attorney can expand on, to complete processing of the Lincoln Place tract and EIR. The council had denied it, which Mr. Councilman's letter reflects, in 1995, and between 95 and 2002, there ensued a period of years where there were lawsuits involving the city and the owner of Lincoln Place at the time. I became involved when we processed the final action on the tentative map through the Planning and Land Use Committee to the City Council in 2002. At that time, for the first time, there was a question raised about the historic nature of the buildings themselves, and while we, the planning staff, took a much closer look at all the issues that were raised about whether or not these buildings were historically significant, we came to the conclusion, and so told you at council, that after the assessment, we concluded they were not historically significant. The council, and we did at the time of the council hearing, go over a variety of conditions that were imposed through the council approval of the tentative map. Some of those conditions are what are under discussion today. Subsequent to the council action, there were another series of suits, and again, I don't know the details of what they consisted of or what parties were involved. And at a later point, as Councilman Rosen, and planning was then not involved directly with the case. We had completed our work through council in 2002. Councilman Rosendahl certainly brought all of us up to date by indicating that there were some evictions last year, there were some evictions last December, and now there are some pending evictions at Lincoln Place today. Planning's role in the process beginning late last year was to always be available to participate when requested and to provide whatever expert advice we could provide to all parties involved in this particular tentative map. The project is approved for 850 new condominium dwelling units. There are a number of conditions that were imposed through the approval of the tentative map. And the tentative map, as we speak today, is still current, is alive, is what the nomenclature we use in planning. I have reviewed the letter that the councilman issued, and I will be prepared to address other items in this and respond, but maybe in terms of history, I'll pass it on to my city attorney colleagues next, in the interest of time.
Thank you very much for that history. City attorneys, hi.
Susan Fan, Assistant City Attorney. I can talk to the most recent litigation history. The litigation challenged the city's issuance of demolition permits. And the court held that we erred when we issued demolition permits without requiring two of the conditions that were listed in the environmental impact report. The litigation is over with now, except there's an appeal on the attorney's fees, the grant of attorney's fees by the real party in interest. But basically what the litigation says, the quotes that you have in your letter are accurate. That is what the Court of Appeals said, as quoted. However, the litigation was issued at the city's, it was directed at the city's action issuing a demolition permit. And so our feeling is that if we are asked to issue another demolition permit in the future for this property, that we would then be subject to the Court of Appeal opinion, and we would have to do an environmental clearance for that. But at the current time, no one is asking the city, no one has applied for a demolition permit. Until that time, it's our belief that the Court of Appeal does not require us to do anything. We've been back in front of the court several times on this issue about what it meant, and it's clear to me from what the court said, certainly, that as long as we do not issue a demolition permit without doing an additional environmental clearance, that we're not going to have a problem with the board, because that's all it told us to do or not do.
Thank you very much for that. Emily, if I can go back to you, when you said the planning uses a term called active, and the tentative track map and the conditions, what process did they go through, and what was the hearings all about, and what was the people's understanding of the tentative track map and the conditions?
I'm not sure I can answer the latter part of your question, people's understanding of the tentative conditions, other than what I've heard anecdotally from others involved in this project. But I can tell you that once the council acts on any subdivision request, and the council action is final, then the subdivision request moves into a category called tentative under state law. And all of the conditions that the council imposed on the subdivision in this tentative action remain in place until the subdivider decides that they are going to perfect or record the tentative approval. In order to record the tentative approval, they must then satisfy all of the conditions in that decision, including things like infrastructure, street widening, bonding, tree location. And in the case of Lincoln Place, there was a fairly detailed series of conditions that described relocation, new affordable units, and other kinds of conditions that were placed on the tentative. It is at that point, however, when the subdivider decides to make this map permanent or final, and council approves final maps on almost all of your agendas, then there must be a confirmation that all of those conditions have been met. And if those conditions are met, then the track may become final. If the conditions are not met, the track cannot be final.
That's interesting. But when the conditions are created, as you're saying, they're tentative, but they're real? Are they real conditions, or are they not?
They are, I don't want to get into the definition of what is in this. But they are real conditions to the extent that they obligate the subdivider to perform. However, the degree of performance occurs when when it is decided by the subdivider to finalize the map. So that may, I'm not sure,
my
Councilman, if I'm
my
clear.
confusion is, if some of these conditions talk about tenants, and we just saw a video where on December 6th, the sheriffs were yanking people out of their structures, and one of the conditions gave you the impression, at least me as a layman, that there was an active map, and therefore these conditions are honorable, or am I wrong on that?
The conditions in the tract, it's my assessment, don't have to be proven to have been followed unless the subdivider wants to finalize the map. So you get this logical inconsistency as you're describing between sheriffs evicting tenants and how does that affect the tentative map.
Right.
If the subdivider came to planning and said, and I've said this, I believe, before at the Planning and Land Use Committee, and said, I want to record the map, I want to clear the tenant conditions now, we would say, well, okay, show us how you met the burden of each one of these tenant conditions. And if they could not show us that, we could not clear the condition.
So then when AMCO bought into a Bismarck property, there was this tentative tract map and conditions that were somewhat part of a process at that point? So in other words, AMCO knew what they were looking at?
It is my understanding, and I'll stand corrected by anyone here, that the current owner, AMCO, bought the property or bought an interest in the property subsequent to the city council action in 2002. Oh, they're saying before.
Well, they probably own part of it, but then now they own all of it since. But they were aware of at least these tentative conditions.
Yes. Oh.
Okay. The court, and I'm going to ask the city attorneys this, and I know there's jitteriness, and I don't want anybody to be jittery. First thing I want you to know is we all received this letter from you all stamped confidential. I used to be, in the State Department and in the Army, and we would stamp things confidential and secret frankly, all the time, and we had the power to do it. And I know once you do it, we keep our mouths shut about the particulars of the letter. So I can't talk about the particulars. But the court said the project started with demolition. Did it not, city attorneys, or what? Explain that part to me.
I'm not sure which letter that is.
The court said, AMCO, let me read it to you, the citation. Attorneys are wrong when they say the demolitions did not mean the project had started. Quote, we find the distinction drawn by the city and the owners between the demolition project and the redevelopment project is disingenuous at best, unquote. CEQA requirements cannot be voided by chopping up proposed projects into bite-sized pieces. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer. That's a quote from them.
That's asked to CEQA. As I explained earlier, CEQA is only triggered when the city council grants a permission to do something, in this case, a demolition permit. Keep in mind, this court did not challenge the track conditions. There was no issue of the track conditions in the litigation. It was only the demolition permit. And the court said, city, when you issued that demolition permit, you should have done an additional, you should have either put the conditions on it that the EIR said were attached to the demolition permit, or you should have done a new environmental clearance to explain it. But right now, we don't have any demolition permits in front of us, just as the final map.
And I might say, colleagues, that from the very beginning, the city attorney's office made it very clear to me that the Ellis Act is on one track and the tentative track map and conditions is on another track, and that they don't intersect, and have said that to me since the very beginning. And of course, my concern has been the tenants. And so if, in fact, they're not on even related paths, the Ellis Act is an Ellis Act. And would somebody explain the Ellis Act, how it's used?
Jerry Burge, Land Use Division of the City Attorney's Office. The Ellis Act is a state law that states that no landlord can be compelled to stay in the rental housing market. The cases, and there are not a lot of them, but the cases have interpreted that to mean that as a city, such as City of Los Angeles, cannot impermissibly burden the right of a landlord to go out of the rental market. And that has most often been seen in the context of City of Los Angeles in the demolition context, where a landlord will come and ask to demolish an apartment building, and the city has been required to allow the landlord to do that, subject to possible relocation assistance type of conditions that are required or may be required if they have shown that they are trying to exit the rental housing market.
So in this particular case, AMCO made that declaration and triggered the process?
As far as I know, yes.
Did you want to say something to that, Peter?
No, that's my understanding as well. What I wanted to say was just something with respect to what Emily had said. You know, the Subdivision Map Act talks about the conditional approval of tentative maps. And so that's what you have here when you have the conditions. You have the conditional approval of the map. And then the Map Act further goes on to make it clear that it's the subdivider that chooses whether or not to take that then to a final map.
Sure.
It's the subdivider which may cause a final map to be prepared. So often you see tentative subdivision maps that are approved that never get built. They're abandoned, whatever the case may be. There are maps out there that expire because they have a limited life. So it really is up to the subdivider to decide whether or not to then proceed to the next step, which is coming into the city and saying, I've met the conditions, I want to get a final map. And as Emily was saying, it's at that point where the city would look to see whether or not, in fact, those conditions had been met. If they have, then it's a ministerial act for the city to approve the final map for recordation. If they have not been met, then the final map is denied. So it's at that point where you know, the city would look to see whether or not those conditions have been met.
Okay, I apologize, colleagues, for this question that's coming next. So the bottom line is, AMCO, when you look at the conditions, and Emily's made it clear that these conditions are these conditions, they can't meet them because the tenants were part of that conditioning thing. So are we speculating that they'll come in with a new track map, totally unrelated to any other track map, and we'll take it through a new process, and that's what they'll have to do? Otherwise, they have to ask all these tenants to come back if they're going to follow the conditions.
Well, I mean, it's up to them to decide how they're going to proceed. I mean, they certainly can file a new application. I mean, that's certainly something that they can do. They own the land.
And my last question, and I really appreciate
I was going to say
this,
you're over.
and I really appreciate this. This cultural historic designation business. There was a point when I was thinking about declaring it cultural and historic, and I was clearly told, look, unless George Washington slept there, Rosendahl, you're going down the wrong path. Well, I didn't continue on that, but both state commissions, the one that was Gray Davis's, made it cultural historic, and then on May 5th, the new state commission that the Governor Arnold put in place voted 5, 1, and 2. What does that have to do with the price of tomatoes on this? I mean, what does it have to do with it, if anything?
That has an implication for SEQA, so that if the developer came in for a demolition permit, aside from the environmental clearance we'd already done, the fact that it was listed by the State Commission as historic leads to a presumption that it's a significant impact.
I see.
And so that has implications, again, for CEQA. It makes it more difficult for the developer to get a demolition permit, and makes it more certain that they would have to do an additional environmental clearance aside from the Court of Appeal opinion.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Madam President, and colleagues, for letting me ask those questions. It helped me in my understanding as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Rosendahl, you had asked 10 minutes for each side on this item, so we will have a 10-minute public hearing. We'll have 1 minute for each, allows us to have as many people as possible. I know a public hearing was held in committee as well.
Madam
yes.
President, just for the clerk's benefit, 19/20/27 forthwith.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask Mr. John Murdoch, followed by Lucy Siam, followed by Sheila Bernard. Then we'll go to the next ones after that.
Good morning, Madam President and members of the council. My name is John Murdoch. I'm an attorney from Santa Monica, and my client is the Lincoln Place Tenants Association. I just came on board this project even more recently than Councilman Rosendahl, and it was my obligation to actually go through and read the history of all of this project and try to figure out what the legal ramifications are. And I want you to realize that the Court of Appeals held last summer that the mitigation measures adopted by this council, even though not recorded, are enforceable right now. That's what the court held. Specifically, Ms. Phan was talking about demolition permits, and please, you've got to pay attention here. This is critical. The city attorney is saying, well, if somebody comes in for a demolition permit, I guess we won't issue it.
I know the tenants have said they'd like you to finish your comments as part of the 10 minutes, and then
Right.
they will fill up the remainder.
Thank you. The issue here is not demolition permits. The issue here is eviction. The city has stamped its approval on a piece of paper that's required before AIMCO can go forward with evictions. That's the same exact thing as issuing a demolition permit, except now what you're doing is removing people instead of buildings. That is illegal under the Court of Appeals decision. I have a lawsuit prepared and ready to file against the city and AIMCO. I called AIMCO last week. They said, please don't file it, let's talk. I'm telling you now that we need to talk because the city is responsible to enforce mitigations. What you heard is that there are extensive relocation conditions. One of those conditions, Condition 5, says that the tenants have the right to remain on site. That's already been violated by the people you saw in that video being evicted. That's a violation. The city allowed it to occur. What you have left now are seniors and disabled people who are facing the same exact fate in violation of the law. We will go to court to stop it. We don't want to sue the city. We don't even want to sue AIMCO. We want them to stop the evictions. We ask that you direct the city attorney to do what's right and stop weaseling on the conditions. They do not have to be recorded. They are mitigation measures. They are enforceable as your duty right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Lucy Siam? Lucy Siam? Okay, he's finished, so the next one would then be Sheila Bernard.
We are counting on you to make policy. It's your job to make policy. The legal opinions you've been hearing from the city attorney, it's very distressing when your attorney is telling you something that's in opposition to what the court is telling you. I know that must be very troubling to you. And it will take a lot of guts, but that's what you have to do. You have to make policy. You have to say, people are not going to be allowed to come into the city with their swords drawn and violate our laws, violate the conditions that they themselves sought and received. Aimco fought for that tract map. They fought for those conditions. Their lawyers were up there with business lawyers fighting for that tract map in 2002. They asked for it, they received it, and now they're violating it. And it's against the law. We need you folks to make policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria Morales, followed by Frida Marlin. Gloria Morales. After Gloria will be Frida Marlin, and then Spike Marlin.
Good morning. My name is Gloria Morales. I'm 74 years old, and I've been living in Lincoln Place for 32 years, and I don't have no place to go. So I plead to you to help us to record these conditions, and then maybe we can have house to stay, because I don't have no money either to move someplace. And plus, you know, I'm sick too. I don't have so much strength to look for a house and then to pack and you know, worry for all these things that are happening to me. I plead you to help us and help Mr. Rosendale to record the condition, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Frida Marlin, followed by Spark Marlin, followed by Wei Tan Shive.
I've been here so many times with all the tenants and everything. You have taken so much of our life just trying to save our homes, because they're worth everything in the world, those places. And to see the police come and knock on the door, it was the most disgusting thing in the world, to put the pride of people to that kind of way. I saw everything that was going on. I begged you guys, I really tried to show you that this is a good home, a wonderful home, and it's a good home for the GIs when they come home, because there's no place to go. And I've heard stories about that too, where the families are torn apart because they take homes away. There's no place to go. I have nowhere to go, nowhere to live anymore. I can't afford the prices of apartments today, and I love my home.
Thank you. Spike Marlin, followed by Wei Tan Shive, followed by Rose Murphy.
Hi, I'm Spike Marlin. I live at Lincoln Place. Most of you are familiar with me ranting here for you. This is really a lot about the difference between fear and common sense. Apparently, the city attorney and Aimco are putting a lot of fear into you about litigation, probably even personal litigation, which is probably what really has you shaking about this. But the fact is that the city made a deal. Aimco made a deal. The deal has been made. All we're asking you to do is stand up and sign off on, yeah, we made this deal. Now stick to it. Because they're breaking the law, they're breaking people's hearts, they're making fun of everybody in this circle. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Shive?
My name is Wei Fen Xu.
Pull down the microphone for her, please.
Thank you. My name is Wei Fen Xu. I'm living in the Lincoln Boulevard almost 25 years. I'm retired. Anything though I best can. Anything, thank you very much.
Thank you. Rose Murphy?
Hi, my name is Rose Murphy, and I just want to say that the cities are being bought out now by these mega developers, these conglomerates, to the detriment of the poor and elderly and disabled. You at City Hall should get the wheels in motion to force Aimco to sell and preserve Lincoln Place, not only for its historic preservation, but because it is a prime location for the elderly. We have close bus proximity, the markets, the small businesses that we frequent for our needs, El Pollo Loco and all those good places. Anyway, help Aimco from developing Lincoln Place. We are the victims of this injustice, and I would like personally to tell Terry Considine, we should tell him collectively, what profiteth a man to gain the world and lose his soul? Thank you. I didn't need to say it, but I had to.
Thank you. Jan Book, followed by Rick Tuttle, followed by Michael Palumbo.
My name is Jan, and I'm an attorney. I also am a former resident. I was locked out on December 6th. Two things I would like to say. Number one is that the Court of Appeals ruled last July that the demolition permits that the city granted Aimco were illegal and required them to be nulled and voided. At that time, Aimco had not recorded the track map, but the Court of Appeals held that they had violated the conditions, and now there's a permanent injunction on having any of those buildings demolished. Second of all, I had a senior moment there, but the thing is that what's going to happen when Aimco does apply for the demolition permits? At that time, are you going to grant them and ask them for the relocation plan as to where the tenants are? There will be no tenants there. So at what point are you going to stand up behind this track map? Thank you very much, and please let your conscience lead you.
Mr. Tuttle.
I'm Rick Tuttle, and I spoke earlier in general comments. I want to speak again. Most of us are pretty well acquainted. Hell, I'm acquainted with some of your parents and colleagues, and I have a good idea why most of us got into politics in the first place. And that is from time to time, against very powerful forces. There's some very good people involved, friends of ours in some cases. Against very powerful forces, from time to time, we stand up for 50 or 55 senior citizens who are about to be evicted, just as 55 or 60 were evicted, as you saw in the video, fittingly enough, on a date that was December 6th. Aimco, if nothing else, is creditable when it comes to eviction. They've shown they'll do it. They did it to our people. They did it to our people. Back Bill Rosendahl today. Tomorrow they may come for the people in your district.
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. Michael Palumbo, followed by Laura Burns.
Hello, I'm Michael Palumbo. I've lived at Lincoln Place for 11 years. I'm here today to tell you to vote your conscience as well, as Jan telling you that. The Court of Appeals determined that Aimco already acted on the track map. We've waited 2 years for our elected officials to uphold the conditions, and you haven't. You need to do that today. I was a resource for the mediation. I illustrated how you could preserve Lincoln Place and do 850, 950, 1008, 1284 new units with the existing historic structures. Aimco wants it all. All they're interested in the entitlements. They're not demolishing buildings. They're demolishing the people, the lives of the neighbors, and the neighborhood. Thank you.
Laura Burns, I don't have an address, I'm sorry. I was locked out on December the 6th. What's very important that you understand is that this argument that the map is tentative and the conditions are tentative until they record it has been thrown out of court. This is a published opinion. It's not about two historical conditions. It's published. And it's the second time that they have said to the city of Los Angeles, if you put those conditions on there, you must see that they're enforceable. You didn't do it on those demolition permits, and no map was recorded. No map was recorded. And the court ruled they are not tentative. If that's described in that project, then you have to enforce it. And these displacement of people from their units, moving to another unit on site, was described in that project. And Aimco, as soon as the other opinion that the city actually won on, could I please just finish this?
Finish your sentence, please.
Okay. The case that the city won on the tract map, I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. It was, Aimco went out and was bragging to every newspaper in town when that appellate court ruling came down and said, our tract map has been validated. We can move right now. All we have to do is offer to sell the buildings and photograph them. And they went in front of the State Historic Resources Commission and said, that tract map was validated, and that redevelopment is validated, and we are moving forward with it, and don't think that you can not kick those tenants out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to read for the record the 4 following names of individuals who are present as well for Mr. Rosenthal's proposal: Noel Weiss, Ingrid Mueller, Seth Hauk, and David Ewing.
Can I just have a minute, please?
The public comment period has closed. Mr. Rosendahl, you want to ask if there are 4 more cards?
What I'd like, if, in the indulgence of my colleagues, if the 4 could speak.
Okay. We'll do that. Okay, Mr. Weiss?
Thank you.
Mr. Weiss.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, just, thank you very much. I appreciate it. A momentous moment. Greeks said, character is destiny. Courage. Without it, nothing else matters. How many people on this council know right now that a tenant in a condo conversion project has a right to have that tentative tract map and those conditions recorded? The tenant mitigation measures. It's right now in the city code, 1295.2. It says that any tenant in a condo conversion project cannot be evicted unless the tenant mitigation measures are recorded. It's there. What Mr. Rosenthal's motion is doing, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Gruhl, please, what we're doing here is simply asking the same protection for these people that those tenants in condo conversion projects have. Now, this is a de facto condo conversion project, and everything that you've listened to here is how to game the system. And these people are trying to leverage 850 units into 1,200 or more on the backs of these tenants. You guys are the referees. We have a chain of failure in this entire situation. Please, we must move forward. Aimco is not prejudiced in any way, shape, or form. If they have a problem, they can go to court. The court will reverse, and we will have clarity. But right now, they're walking between the raindrops, and you're the only thing. You are the only thing between these tenants being on the street and some justice here. And again, there is no prejudice whatsoever to Aimco, because we will get the benefit of whatever court ruling comes out of this. So
thank you, Mr. Weiss.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Ingrid Mueller, followed by Seth Hauk and David Ewing.
Thank you very much for extending the time. I'm Ingrid Mueller, an 18-year resident at Lincoln Place. I would like to read into the record for Mr. Weiss's district, Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, just as an example of the support that tenants throughout the city have given to the LPTA. Los Angeles is at an important crossroad. We face an acute housing shortage coupled with the fact that there is no comprehensive plan in effect guiding development. As a result, there is no balance, resulting in projects being approved that are not a good fit. That is, they solve one problem, that is providing more housing, but creating many more as traffic in a city that lacks a logical approach to determining traffic mitigation measures from new developments by allowing developers to pay for and supervise their traffic studies. As members of the Board of Directors of Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, and the undersigned are Mr. Richard Close, the President, Alan Vukovic, and Nancy Khalil, members of the Board of Directors. We are actively involved in planning issues affecting Sherman Oaks. We're in support of the above referenced motion, this motion before you.
If we could just ask you to conclude.
Certainly. Regrettably, most of the people who are being or have been evicted from rent-controlled apartments cannot afford to purchase a brand-new condo in the same community in which they formerly resided. Thus, their options are limited for finding affordable new housing. Again, in a city experience an acute housing shortage. While to some it might seem surprising that a long-standing homeowners association such as SOHO would be interested in the plight of renters, it should not be surprising. We support the efforts of the speakers testifying in support.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Seth, followed by David.
Thank you. Thank you, council people, for giving us additional time. I'd just like to say that, in my view, it's an issue of law enforcement enforcing existing laws and a court ruling. And when a court ruling didn't go in my favor and my neighbor's favors, As you saw in the video, there were sheriffs at our door and Los Angeles police officers at our door. But there's been a court ruling against Aimco, and there's no debate about the fact that the buildings were demolished. You can visit, and there's an empty lot there. And so I'd just like to see equal enforcement of the law for individuals and for the landlord in this case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ewing.
Yes, my name is David Ewing. I spoke a little earlier. I'd like to just cede my time to Laura Burns to add one thing that she forgot to put in the record. And I would also like to say, you guys are in a real fight. Real fights are tough. That's why they're worth fighting. You've been threatened. You've been told that courage is sometimes a matter of doing the right thing rather than the popular thing. I think it's very clear that in this case, the right thing is a difficult thing to do, and it's really if you accede to threats, you're simply I hate to. I don't want to see you kissing up and kicking down, which is what it's going to turn out to be otherwise. Thanks.
I just would ask that I be able to submit my written comments into the record, and also the transcript of the hearing in front of the appellate court of Susan Phan, and a letter from John Murdoch.
Great.
And also a letter that could you hold the record open, because I'd like to add a few things to it. For example, we have a letter from Mr. Delvac to the State Historic Resources Commission saying that if there's historic designation granted, that will impact negatively the project approval they have in place. That's a track map.
You can provide that to the clerk. Thank you. That closes public comment. We have heard all of the cards from the people. Thank you very much. Excuse me, on the one side. Now, the last public comment card is for Mr. Delvac.
Take as much time as he wants.
Within the 10 minutes as we.
President Pro Tem Gruhl, honorable members of the council, William Delvac of Latham & Watkins on behalf of the property owner Aimco. I will not be taking 10 minutes. This matter has been before you any number of times. I do need to speak to the issue of courage. It is time for all the parties involved to not be given false hope as to what the rights, remedies, and outcomes can be here. Your city attorney has advised you that you may not take this action. That is our view, and recordation against Aimco's property would be an illegal act, possibly a taking, possibly civil rights violations, and is preempted by the Subdivision Map Act. Do not take a step that's going to bring us down another 2-year detour. It is time for the city and Aimco and the tenants to resolve what project will be built here. Don't take this misstep. It is very, very clear that this would be a cloud on Aimco's title. It is unprecedented. If you read the transcript from the Plum hearings, you'll see that your city attorney and your advisory agency has advised you that such an action would be unprecedented in the city. Why would we take this detour and give people false hope when you and we know that it is not right, it is not appropriate? The conditions of the tentative track map apply when the map is recorded. The map is not recorded. Again, I urge you, send the parties back to getting a project done and don't take this detour. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Delvac. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Reyes, followed by Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to ask the city attorney and the planning personnel to the desk, please hold my time. For the record, some assertions are made by our speakers regarding the city's posture between what is legally binding, what we're adhering based on what the courts have said versus our actions. Can we receive some clarity on that? And if there are differences, what are they, for the sake of my colleagues?
Jerry Burge, Land Use Division, City Attorney's Office. I think the easiest way I can explain it is that there is a fundamental difference of opinion between the tenant side and the city attorney as far as what the Court of Appeal decision means. Our position is that the tentative track map was not a subject of the lawsuit. It was never mentioned in the lawsuit. It was never litigated in the lawsuit. There was no mention of the conditions of the tentative track map and how they relate to recordation of a map in the lawsuit, and yet that is what is before you now. Our position is that what is before you now, recordation of tentative track map conditions, was not a subject of the lawsuit. The lawsuit related to demolition permits.
Let's just go down the what-if path. What if we vote to instruct the recordation of a tentative track map with all of its conditions? What happens?
Again, Jerry Burge for the record. First, let me just say what I said in Plum, which is the recordation of tentative track map conditions, in my opinion, has no force or effect. Tentative track map conditions are simply that. They are tentative, and they have no effect until they are recorded. The map is recorded, excuse me. And so unless and until this map is recorded, recording these tentative track map conditions has no meaning. However, it could have a meaning for the developer. Certainly the developer has alleged and argued that it has a meaning for them, and they are arguing that it would cloud their title, and they are arguing that it would be a discriminatory act by the city because, yes, indeed, we have never recorded conditions of a tentative track map, and they are arguing that it may be a taking of their property and it may be a violation of their civil rights. So even though the action of recording tentative track map conditions, in my opinion, has no force or effect, it could have a litigation force or effect.
But the question lingers, why would an owner go through a process of defining and establishing conditions for a tentative track map if they were never going to implement them? Or is it because we don't know if they will or not?
Yes, again, sorry, Jerry Burge, there's so many of us up here. That is absolutely up to the subdivider. The subdivider has the right to decide whether he, she, it wants to record the map. Many things happen through the years, mostly economic, my understanding, to make a subdivider change its mind. The advisory agency, I think, has already told you that there are track maps that are never recorded. So it's hard for me to say why a subdivider would allow these conditions to be imposed on a tentative track map. That's their business call, but they certainly have no obligation to comply with those conditions unless and until they want to record them and record the map.
Have we ever put ourselves in a place where we have gone against, as a body, as a council body, against the advice of the city attorney, against a interest group like a developer, and what have been the consequences as such? Do we have anything of any case that highlights? I know I mentioned it once in Plum, but for the record, I'd like to bring it to the table.
Well, Jerry Burge, you're putting me on the spot, Councilman. Certainly, there have been situations in the past where money damages have accrued as a result of a city and/or an elected official not following the advice of his or her attorney. But that, of course, is always subject to the facts of the case.
Right. And it's not my intention to raise that as an intimidation or stimulate a fear factor here of what we need to do, but as chair of Plum, I do need to put on the table our fiduciary responsibilities to the corporate municipality that we represent. And there was a case that stands out in my mind where a council member, and it's for the record, Councilor Pikus did push a certain issue. We did lose it in Warner Ridge, Warner Center, and essentially we lost. The developer not only got their entitlements, but I believe we ended up paying out close to $55 million, if not more, in damages and some. So the developer got their way. All of the positions we were taking were essentially swept aside, and they were able to fulfill their goals at the cost of the community. I also want to stress, though, that I've been watching my colleague, Councilman Rosendahl, ever since he's come into this process, has had intensive meetings with all the parties and has come close to establishing agreements with a focus on the tenants. And the tenants has been the focus all along. It hasn't been the buildings, the history of the buildings. It's historic significant, although some, I might say, and I'll just say it, based on their actions, probably put more value on buildings instead of people. As a result, we did not end up with an agreement, and now we have the condition we have today, where we have to make policy based on legal precedents, based on advice of our attorneys. I'm hoping that we understand that there's a lot to be weighed out here. When you look at our RSO units throughout the city, we have hundreds and hundreds of folks being displaced as we speak. In my district, it's been going on for the past 5 years. I would say every other week there's someone being displaced because it's a choice by the landlord to pull out of the residential business and convert into condos or something else. That being said, this did come forward without a recommendation from Plum, but I believe we need to raise more questions so that we can come to a point where we can make a decision.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Our next speaker is Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. Well, as we know, this has certainly been before us many times, and we've read, we've argued, we've debated, we've listened to advice, and I've read a lot about this. I paid a lot of close attention to this, and I will tell you, it is clear to me, and I know there's, conflicting advice about this, but it's clear to me that we've had some bad advice on this project in the past, which is part of why I think we're in the problem we're in. And I think all of us, me particularly, have been looking for a solution, have been looking for something that we can do to save the remaining tenants at Lincoln Place. And we've been waiting, we've been listening to the city attorney, we've been listening to advice, we've been listening to planning, and yet I don't think any of us, when we entered into and agreed on these conditions in the beginning, felt like they wouldn't be adhered to. I don't think any of us believed that tenants would be evicted. I don't think any of us would sit here and look at the video we saw this morning of people literally being, with brute force, being removed from their longtime place of residence. It breaks my heart as well to see a place like Lincoln Place come to this place that they're in today. And I will tell you that I am going to move and I am going to vote for Bill's two resolutions here in his motion. And I'm going to move those and I'm going to vote on those in agreement because I think at this point we have got to fix something that is broken. I think that is our right. I think that is why we are here today. And something is broken, and I think we have the opportunity to fix it, and I think we should do that today, and I'm going to stand up and do that. It's the right thing to do. It doesn't take all that much courage, in my opinion. There's other things that take a lot more courage. This is, in my opinion, this is right. This is easy to do. And if we can do this as the legislative body of the City of Los Angeles, then truly, I think we will be the world-class city that we want to be, and that's by first and foremost saving those who most need our help. Thank you. So I move those two.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Our next speaker is Ms. Gruhl.
I have just a couple questions following a little bit on Ed's, because we've had the same conversation on some projects in my district about the fact that, the inconsistencies, and I think, common sense, as I think many of you mentioned, of having a tentative track map, having things occur that don't follow the conditions of that, and what kinds of, hammers do we have later on if they have not followed those rules? Have we ever in this council, and this is more of a global question, because again, it's something that I think all of our offices may experience, looked at a legislative fix for that, other than the recording which you've indicated, which has some meat to it, some ability to have them abide by the original track map, tentative track map that's been put forward.
Jerry Burge, City Attorney's Office. I think the problem
Hold
that
my
you
time.
have is that you have two competing state laws that are involved. You have the state law of the Ellis Act, and you have the state law of the Subdivision Map Act. And so they are both state laws that have brought up this inconsistency. And I think the fix, if you will, would be with the state law, because there does appear to be an inconsistency. However, let me emphasize, and I'm not sure I have, that if there were no tentative map on this property, they would, of course, be able to go out of the rental housing market per the state law of Ellis Act, and the tenants would be allowed their relocation assistance and anything else allowed either under our rent stabilization ordinance or the state law Ellis Act. It is just the fact that there is a tentative map on this case that makes that difference. But otherwise, they would be entitled to do this without a tentative track map.
And what happens if they come back, Aimco comes back in 2 years from now or 6 months or whatever and says, okay, we're ready now, we have our tentative track map ready for the council to take action on that. What authority do we have to deny that at that point based on the, it looks like violations of the original
The
tentative track
council
map
has the
conditionals?
authority to deny the final map if they find it's not in compliance with the conditions of approval. So AIMCO can say, we're ready to record our map, but the question that they would have to answer is, have they complied with all of the conditions that were placed on the tentative decision? And if the answer is no, then the council has the authority to
say
deny
no.
the final map.
Now then, if they come forward, I mean, I just, looking and dealing with a lot of projects in my district where they find another way, where they come and say, well, we're really not going to use that tentative track map. Here's our new plan, our new thing that has nothing to do with the tentative track map you've approved before. How does that then impact the fact that they may not have followed that original tentative track map?
They can file a new map over the same property if they wish and go through the entire public process and environmental process
And none of those
review and
original
analysis.
conditions of the tentative track map that they agreed to when it was adopted would follow with that?
The original issues would probably be carried forward if someone filed a new map, because we do have a public hearing. It is subject to public notification. We do go through an environmental clearance.
And how would we protect, again, I think where all of us are coming from, and Mr. Rosendahl has been a champion on this, the issue is what happens, those people are all gone. They're evicted. The remedies, all the things that you would anticipate happening couldn't happen again. It couldn't be replicated.
The condition that the new map could be denied. I mean, it might not even reach a tentative approval stage for a variety of reasons.
And then just in reading some of the documentation we've received and indicated that there have been case law that's indicated, this is your advice, that we cannot record something without the property owner. Is that correct? Property owner's approval?
Jerry Burge, City Attorney's Office. I did provide confidential advice related to this issue, but I will say that there is a provision in the Subdivision Map Act that says that only final and parcel maps may be recorded consistent with state law. And since this is a tentative track map that is also subject to that state law, it is our opinion that under state law, conditions of the tentative map cannot be recorded. We would be preempted by the state law because the state law only allows final and parcel maps to be recorded. This would be part of a tentative track map. And so in our view, the city is preempted from recording any conditions of a tentative track map.
And if we, this is just probably a separate motion, I'm not sure in doing this, which is to ask City Attorney, because it looks like several of the remedies for the big picture, not only Lincoln Place, but for some other projects in our districts, is to look at some legislative fixes and ask the City Attorney to come back with some recommendations for us that we would potentially get a sponsor in the state to help us be able to deal with these inconsistencies.
We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Labange, you're our next speaker.
Thank you very much. Just a couple questions here. Is the demo permit on hold illegally, or has that been?
In compliance with the court's order, I came back to council
and council in open session rescinded its approval of demolition permits.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The city's been enjoined from issuing any additional demolition permits until we complete a new environmental clearance.
New environmental clearance. And let me just ask another question. Would the applicant ever want to abandon the track map that they have going right now?
Jerry Burge, that's a decision completely up to the subdivider, although in my opinion, there's really no such thing as abandonment. I don't know of anything in the state law that allows abandonment. It means that you allow the map to expire. So I personally have not been able to find any way to abandon a map. I suppose they could write a letter to the city saying we no longer want to pursue this map.
And Ms. Gable, can I ask you a question? You've been with the city over 20 years?
Yes.
You started when you finished your college
I started
days?
when I was 13.
13, that's okay. Student worker. No, a student worker there, Mr. Tuttle. Question, this has been going on for 19 years?
Sorry?
19 years, this has been an application, I mean, through our planning processes for 19 years?
17 years, I think.
Well, 17, 19, that's
Long time.
a lot.
Let's.
You know, I mean, I know it's been a challenge for everyone on this particular issue here. My concern, which I'm finding recently happening a little bit more, is a lot of people do a lot of work and then they don't complete the whole work and then they flip it to somebody else. You know, do you have any idea if they're interested in flipping this, or how committed are they to building housing?
I have no idea.
See, that's the thing that I have starting to have trouble with. I'm a believe in property rights and believe in tenants' rights and believe in the whole challenge, but what is happening is more and more people are flipping things, and then we're the bad guys. We're the bad guys because we're the city council, and we don't do anything. So I think there's got to be a way we figure it out, even though it's been 17, 18, 19 years or whatever it has been on this deal here, because it's going to happen more and more, because these properties are very unique to Los Angeles, and I have no problem. Yesterday, Bill, I told you I was in Sawtelle at the National Cemetery and in the afternoon with my son and his buddy, and then we drove over to Jackie Robinson Stadium and drove through Sawtelle and the Brentwood. And to all the people listening from Brentwood, you know, if we could build more housing for veterans on that property, I'd like to see it done. I'd rather see more housing in Sawtelle, although some people don't want any more housing out there in Brentwood because of the challenges, traffic, and et cetera, et cetera. With that in mind, I asked my questions. I've greatly enjoyed the very emotional, direct debate and comments from the public on this issue here, and I look forward to a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Zine is our next speaker.
I asked the city attorney if the matter should go into closed session at this particular juncture. I feel compassion for the people. I understand the legal issues involved, and I'm asking if it would be appropriate this time to move into executive session, closed session, to further discuss this matter and come up with hopefully a vote with this body.
Jerry Burge, that's up to the council. I would say that we would recommend closed session if you want to talk about particular liability for particular facts.
Well, Jerry, that's my issue, is that the city attorney gives us discussion, recommendation. If we don't follow that, the consequences.
Mr. Zine, would you like to make a motion to go into
Well, I'd
closed
like to make a
session?
motion, and we go into the executive session to hear about the liability factors.
Is there a second for that motion?
Was there a second to that motion?
Okay. Is there a second on the motion? Okay, we have a second on the motion from Mr. Parks. Mr. City Attorney, I need some recommendation from you. We have a motion that's been seconded, and then Mr. Rosendahl intervened and said not yet. So what do you recommend we do? The motion's on the desk, or the motion's on the table. Should we vote on the motion?
I would recommend voting on the motion.
All right, now.
And actually, before we do, if I could.
Mr. City Attorney, do you have to vote on the motion, or could, if he wanted a little more public time, and then go into closed session? I mean, if he had what reason do you want to hold it up?
Or do you need for Mr. Rosendahl to then make a second motion asking for us to delay going into closed session? Do we need to amend the motion? Can we vote on the motion that we have on the table now?
I think the motion could be tabled, and you could continue your open session discussion. If council does go into closed session, I do have to make some required Government Code Section.
Okay, so clarification, should we vote on the motion that Mr. Zine made and that Mr. Park seconded now?
You don't have to vote on it now. You could vote on it later.
Does he need to withdraw it? Or can we just hold it on the desk?
You could just hold it on the desk.
All right. Is that,
I just wanted to, I think that the legal issues, the legal liabilities need to be discussed, and I think the appropriate forum for that, and I don't know if that's the appropriate time now, but I know that some juncture we're going to approach that. I know that, Mr. Rosendahl, I support you and your mission. I also recognize liability, and I support the people who are looking for affordable housing. So what I'm trying to do is bring some closure to this. I know we've heard it a number of times. If we need to discuss it further, I think most of us have heard it a number of times and have our own opinions, but the legal ramifications is what I'm trying to resolve before I make a final decision. So the will of the council, whatever, if we want to continue discussing it or discuss the legal liabilities.
Can we just table it for 2 questions?
We can do that, that's fine.
I think
all
there's
right,
only
can we
2.
hold it for, okay, Mr. Reyes, what's your request again?
Just to table it, to allow Councilman Rosendahl and myself to ask our question to the table, then we can close to closed session?
Then we need, no, then we need to vote on the motion after that.
Okay.
All right, so I'll hold the motion on the desk.
That's fine.
And our next speaker will be Mr. Reyes.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify one point, and again, this is with the focus on the human factor, the folks who are right now here who are in jeopardy of their apartments and where they live. Let's assume we do pass this and the courts hold up the conditions. Do we have as a body, as a city, any power to make sure that these particular tenants would benefit from or stay within their units? Do we have any power to make sure that particular dynamic occurs?
I'm sorry, Councilman, I didn't hear the end of your question. Do we have any power to assure that the tenants what?
Is there
I'm sorry?
any way we could enforce that the property owners who are right now managing the facility, who own the facility, actually take care of the tenants that are right now with us in council, given that?
Well, Jerry Burge again. Of course, if these units are subject to the rent stabilization ordinance, then the landlord must comply with that ordinance in order to evict them. So we always have the power to enforce, although generally our ordinance allows the tenants to enforce it. But we do have our rent stabilization ordinance. But other than that, I don't know of any way.
So it's only under the umbrella of the RSO ordinance that we're able to make sure they stay within their units. Other than that, we don't have any power.
Councilman, if I may, I understand.
That's the question.
If the city council votes to record the conditions, are you asking, does that have any practical effect on the tenants in terms of?
Okay, I'm sorry. Again, I've already answered that question. No. It does not. The recording of the tentative map conditions is, in my opinion, a meaningless act. They have no force or effect unless and until the map is recorded. So we would have no power to enforce them or do anything. It's notice. It's notice to any potential owner, to any potential developer that if that map is to be recorded, then those conditions must be complied with.
Is there a time constraint between the tentative tract on recording and the final recording? Is there a constraint in time between those 2 acts?
My understanding is 8 years. I don't know how much time is left on that. I would ask the Deputy Advisory Agency.
I don't know exactly how much time is left on it because when litigation started after the council took its action in 2002, that suspended the time limits within which to complete your tentative map. So it would be my guess, but just a guess, that they have about 8 years as of today.
And then that begs the question, how long does the SRO ordinance, how long does it have in that area or in that location? And that's something we would have to evaluate as well. Okay.
I'm not sure that the SR ordinance would affect this. I haven't looked into that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Zine and Mr. Parks, for allowing us to table it for a moment so we can flesh out a few more points. I'd like to ask Larry Frank, the mayor's deputy, to come up to the podium, who has played a role in all of this. And while he's coming up, I just want to ask one question of the city attorney. San Diego and San Francisco have a process where a tentative track map and conditions has validity within the process. Are you familiar with that?
Jerry Burge, we did review what was sent to us. I frankly can't recall if it were San Diego and San Francisco, but everything that every single person sent to our office, we reviewed and felt that there was a distinction between what they did and what we did, or, in our opinion, what they did may not have any significance.
Okay. And before Larry opens his mouth on this, just one final question about tentative track maps. Developer gets up and says, I'm getting out of the rental business. AMCO is the biggest renter in America with 1 million tenants across the board. Doesn't that seem a little something to look at or not? Since their track record is apartment rentals, not condominiums.
Again, Jerry Burge, I'm not sure that's a legal question. That may be some kind of policy question, but they have the right to comply with the law.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Larry, tell us about the mayor's involvement. Mayor and I have talked about it as recently as yesterday at the Veterans Memorial. We were with the governor. We both realized we're on a deadline. As you know, you were in the room. The mayor and I called Terry Considine back in November, hoping we could get a reprieve from the December 6th day through the holidays. We didn't get it. And I know you've sat in on different negotiation sessions. What's your feeling at this point?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. At Councilman Rosenthal's request, the mayor did get deeply involved in the negotiations to try to save the tenancies at Lincoln Place. And I probably put about 40 hours in on top of, in actual negotiations, on top of all the other pieces. And then our West Area Director, John Brady, in this last round of negotiations, put another, say, 30 or 35 hours in on that. And it's been a kind of deeply distressing experience because both times it was very close to a possible resolution. I'm not going to, in this context, say who's to blame for it not getting settled, but I will say that it's clear that one group that was at the table are going to bear a very heavy brunt of it, which are the remaining tenants and obviously the previously evicted tenants. My sense of where things are going is that the filing of this track map, I'm not convinced that it's going to make a lot of difference in this case. I think the city attorney will say that it is not going to make a difference. I've also observed AIMCO's anger about the possibility of it being filed, which does sort of make me ask some questions about maybe it does have some meaning in this process. I think it could, in fact, lead to a possible lawsuit. I think that is possible. But if it were my vote, which it's not, right? My vote would be to err on the side of the tenants and to take a yes here. Would be where I would go. And it's a tough call you guys have to make, but it is in fact something that people have put a tremendous amount of work into trying to figure out. And that would be my kind of sense of the equation for what it's worth, which is not a whole lot, but it's for what it's worth. And the mayor is deeply, deeply concerned and does ask Councilman Rosendahl and myself about it periodically to track where the negotiations have gone.
I want to thank you very much. I want to thank Mayor Villaraigosa for his support, and I want to thank you and John Brady for being with us through this whole process. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Welcome.
That concludes my comments, and I'm more than willing to go into closed session and talk about some of the fine points.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosendahl. All right, so the motion made by Mr. Zine, seconded by Mr. Parks, is now on the desk, and I believe we need to take a vote on that. Want to open the roll? Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes, 3 noes.
All right.
Council is authorized to go into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9B3C.
Madam President, just a suggestion, since there's
For
a lot of people
clarification?
here,
Okay.
could we go in the back room, which is easier for us than to have these people go out of this room?
Oh, okay. Oh, Mr. City Attorney, Ms. Hahn has requested for purposes of clarification to the listening audience and the individuals here in the council chamber, if you would clarify the vote we just took.
Thank you, Madam President. The last vote was merely as to whether to go into closed session. Council has not voted on one way or the other on the tentative tract map issue. And Council is authorized to go into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9B3C, which refers to a written communication from a potential plaintiff threatening litigation, and that is found in the May 30th letter from Mr. Delvac, which was circulated in Council today, and which states on page 2, and I quote, "City will be liable for Aimco's damages. Aimco would be substantially damaged by the unilateral recordation of tentative tract map number 51337, and the city would be liable for such damages, potentially in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The recordation of restrictions would subject the city to claims under the Tort Claims Act for slander of title, as well as under Section 1983 of Title 42 of the United States Code."
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Mr. Labange, your button is pressed. Did you want to make further comment?
Attorneys who are involved, I have to retract my suggestion due to the fact that the capacity of the room wouldn't allow it to be in a spot. I apologize. The room's very small. Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Labange. So now we will go into closed session.
Right, and that's why I had to say, whoa, don't do that. But they were talking about, they're trying to do some caveats or whatever.
agreement's expired.
She said like what, in terms of.
They're getting confused here, and now they're trying to do the thing. Mike, why would this not be posted? This is the last one on the table. That's what I'm saying. The continuation would be first.
Okay, we're on we've just concluded our executive session. Mr. Clerk, the item now before us.
Madam President, there was a motion made in closed session to continue this matter to June 7th.
That motion is before us, been moved by Mr. Reyes and seconded by Mr. Zine to continue this until June 7th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Madam Clerk, open the roll. Yes. Yes, okay. Yes, Ms. Hahn.
Yes, I would just like to make a point of clarification to the members and to the audience that I made the motion that we formally record the tentative tract map conditions and that we ask the City Planning Department to report back to us if we need to have further action or instruction. But what's happening now is someone moved, I think Mr. Reyes moved, that we continue this item for a week. So if we continue this item for a week, we will not vote on the motion, which I think supports Bill Rosendahl in asking us to record the conditions of the tentative tract map. So I want everyone to know exactly what we're doing. So I'm going to vote no on continuing it.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Okay, Mr. Reyes.
I assert that we should give this body the real opportunity to work with the authorities here, the city attorney, to make sure we take care of the tenants, that we make sure we have all the tools in place to take care of the tenants, because it's my feeling at this point, the direct link in addressing the needs of the tenants is too vague and too gray, and the additional time would allow us the proper instruments to be reviewed by our legal team, our planning professionals, to support our Councilman Rosendahl, and most of all, to make sure the quality of life for our tenants remains intact. That's the reason why I'm asserting for a continuance.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Weezer, followed by Ms. Perry. Ms. Hahn, I don't know if you were pushed again. Did you speak already?
Thank you.
And Mr.
Earlier
Rosendahl.
today, I heard that there's a deadline for May 31st. If we continue this item for 1 week, what will happen now that we missed some deadline that is May 31st?
Jerry
Can
Burge.
hold my time, please.
City Attorney's Office. The deadline, if I understand it correctly, is that the remaining tenants could be evicted as of May 31st. But I also understand that the subdivider, the landlord, has agreed to give 10 days' notice of any evictions before anyone is actually evicted.
For a 10-day notice. And so we come back a week from now, which is 7 days from now. It's possible that those tenants could get a 10-day notice, given that the Ellis Act has expired or whatever action takes on the 31st. There might be other things in there that we're not aware of that now the developer has additional authority and right to do. And so I think that's a very serious issue. We don't know what's in the Ellis Act unless somebody here at the City Attorney's Office could explain to me every right that is being given to the developer. That's why I'm opposed to continuing this item. Mr. Rosenthal has been dealing with this issue for many, many months now. He's been asking every meeting when the people come speak here, he's been asking, what can I do? He's looked at us and said, what can we do to solve this? I don't think we're going to come with anything more enlightening in 7 days as what we have before us today. I hope we do. I hope we do. But I know Mr. Rosenthal has been asking everyone in the planning department, City Attorney's Office, council members, everybody, he's been asking us for that assistance. This is what he told us today he can do to help the tenants. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and I'm concerned that we're giving away some rights that these tenants have, and that's why I'm voting no on the continuance.
Ms. Perry?
I wanted to just ask just a short clarification on, well, that's okay. I'll withdraw that.
Okay. Ms. Hahn?
I just wanted to, again, say the same thing. If we're going to continue this for a week and the deadline is May 31st for the next group of tenants to be evicted, there's nothing that's going to prevent, even if it's a 10-day notice, there's nothing to prevent this developer from notifying them tonight and that they're going to be evicted. So I think we need to support Bill and what he's asking us to do to record these conditions on the tentative track map to send a very loud, clear message that we as a city oppose these tenants being evicted today, tomorrow, or 10 days from now.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes, followed by Mr. Rosendahl.
Again, for the record, I appreciate Councilman Huizar and Councilman Hahn's observations. The fact is, even if we do support Councilman Rosenthal, and they do record the tenant track, it doesn't preclude the property owner from evicting the tenants. It does not preclude them from evicting the tenants. So I don't want to mislead anyone here. In your presentation, in my presentation, I'm laying out the facts. So I'm asking, if we have the continuance, maybe we come up with an instrument, maybe we have that option, but supporting for the recordation does not preclude the tenants from being evicted.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Madam President. It's a tough one, and I know my colleagues' sympathy is with the tenants, and I appreciate everybody's comments in closed session and in public session. It was quite a moving experience for me. But I got to send a message, and the message is you don't keep messing with tenants. And frankly, the tentative track map with tentative conditions was a process that people went through that they thought was not a charade, that they thought actually had validity in the process of giving them some hope and some opportunity. I understand separate tracks and all these other issues that we've been enlightened about, but the bottom line is we're grasping for an opportunity to say to a new developer, it's only been in this town a few years with this project, since maybe '02 or '03, that we as a city care about people and that you need to work with us on the issues of people. So I think we need to send them a strong signal. They're from Denver. It's just an hour away by plane. That the people here in the 11th District and throughout the city of Los Angeles as tenants should have some rights. It shouldn't be just an Ellis Act that say I'm getting out of the business and throw people out. In my district, 3,000 have been thrown out. That's 3 times more than the 5th District, and it's like 10 times more than most of the city. All of my tenants, 50% of my constituents are tenants, are threatened by this combination of issues. So, and I appreciate the sincerity of my colleagues to want to continue this item to see if we can work things through. I'm worried about tomorrow being May 31st, and therefore the legal options under the Ellis Act end, and I strongly urge you to vote no on a continuance and vote yes on our motion to record the conditions. Thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl was our last speaker. Mr. Clerk, if you could repeat again what is before us today.
Right now before you is the Reyes-Zine motion to continue the matter to June 7th.
Madam Clerk, open. Mr. Wiesar, did you have a question, or you just pushed? Okay. Pushed the wrong button. Okay. All right. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
6 ayes, 7 noes.
That does not pass. Next item.
Now you have before you the Hahn-Rosendahl motion, which is to approve the recommendations as contained in the Rosendahl resolution, which is to instruct the City Planning Department to prepare and complete the appropriate documentation to record the conditions of approval of tentative track map number 51337 in connection with the Lincoln Place Apartments located at Frederick and Lake Streets. And second, to instruct the Planning Department to report back to the Council if further action or instruction is required.
Okay. The item is now before us. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
7 ayes, 6 noes.
Excuse me? Okay, there seems to be a problem here. Excuse me. We will try one more time. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the votes. Yours won't work either, Mr. Parks. Okay. All right. Maybe third time is a charm for everyone to be able to vote. So if we could clear it again, Madam Clerk. Clear all the votes. Okay. Open the roll. Yes. Okay, hold on. Okay, now we're ready. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
We have 5 ayes and 8 noes.
That item does not pass.
And, Madam President, I would recommend that there be a motion to receive and file the motion.
Someone like to move? Mr. Weiss? It's just to receive and file. We have a second on that?
Is there a second?
If not, it will, does it come back to us, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, it would trail.
Mr. Wesson seconds that, to receive and file. Madam Clerk, open the roll on the receive and file. Close the roll. Tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Receive and file. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those will be posted and referred.
That clears the desk, Madam President.
Do we have any announcements? Any announcements today? Yes, Mr. Wiesar?
I have item number 15 sent forthwith, please.
Item 15 will be sent forthwith. Other announcements, Mr. Reyes?
Yes, Plum was scheduled for 2 o'clock. I'd like to begin that at 2:40. Gives it time to take a deep breath and move on.
2:40. Yes, Ms. Hahn?
Thank you. I just want to make an announcement. Our ad hoc committee on gang violence will be holding a very special public meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. right here in our council chambers. We've had a very interesting issue come up in terms of the gang injunctions in the city of Los Angeles. 13 years ago, gang injunctions were instituted as a way, as a tool for police officers and the city attorney to take control of neighborhoods and ban gang members from congregating. However, 13 years later, we have examples of people who have tried to get their name off the list because they've gone on to go to school or get a job or change their life, and we found that there's been some problems there. Tomorrow, for the first time, we are going to have a public hearing where the city attorney, the police department, and our ad hoc committee on gang violence will listen to testimony about the good and the bad that has come from gang injunction, and possibly will make recommendations on how we might have a better exit strategy for those who have changed their life and have left gangs behind. It'll be a very interesting public meeting tomorrow, 2 o'clock, here in council chambers. We encourage everybody to weigh in on this very important issue in the city of Los Angeles.
Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much, Janice. It's very important for people to understand at the core of this hearing is going to be the fact of the matter is in the committee meeting previously, the city attorneys present confirmed that there has not been one gang member on the list or person who felt that they are not a gang member and should not be on the list. There's never been a name that has made it on that list that has ever been taken off. So that's what we're going to be looking into tomorrow. How can we have such a perfect system? That's in question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Any announcements? If not, we have adjourning motions today. Any adjourning motions? If not, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Cardenas, Gruel, Han, Weezer, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine.
This item's been adjourned. Thank you.